We haven't done our Leinster report card. We did a Munster report card on Monday. So we dive into the Leinster one.
Yeah, we might as well. Yeah, might as well. I think what we're looking at alphabetically. Antrim first.
Yeah.
It's kind of I don't know. You nearly half forget until you kind of give a second thought to how it actually finished up. But they were competitive in most of their games. Very competitive against Wexford when they came back down in Wexford Park. And they obviously beat Westmeath in their last game to save their bacon. Like at the end of the day, what was their goal at the start of the Leinster Championship? To retain their status. The last time they got up from the McDonagh, they played in the knockout Leinster Championship, and were they relegated immediately back? I think they were. So, like, if you're talking about, achieving your main goal at the start of the year, and Darren Gleeson might say otherwise, that they wanted to win a game or whatever. They drew with Dublin, of course, in the first game as well. When you think about it, that was a massive, massive result.
Yeah, and like, even if you look at Dunloy, which has nothing to do with this rating, the fact that they got to an All-Ireland club final as well, you can start, if you want to, you can really paint a good picture of Antrim hurling this year. So yeah, drew with Dublin 119 apiece, lost to Wexford by 4 points, no disgrace in that. Fairly hammered by Kilkenny 531 to 320. Galway filleted them 529 to 122, and Westmeath then they beat 424 to 119. And this is after surviving in the league as well. So I think overall a pretty good year. Like, what do we expect Antrim to do in a year? Do we expect them to finish ahead of Wexford or Dublin? Obviously, they're never going to finish ahead of Galway or Kilkenny, really. Or certainly doesn't feel like in our lifetime that's going to happen.
I disregard the Galway game as well, Shane, because like they put out a second string team there essentially because to make sure they had everyone ready for the week after against Westmeath to make sure that they wouldn't pick up injuries. So I kind of disregard the Kilkenny game. You can't really disregard that because they were absolutely annihilated in it. But in general, what you have to say, what wasn't a bad season and didn't just beat Westmeath, comprehensively beat them.
Yeah. Like if you were to tell me that out of those 5 games that they beat Westmeath, which is what they absolutely needed to do to survive, and obviously because Westmeath got their victory over Wexford, it was more imperative still for them to win that game to stay up. And if you were to get one result out of your games against Wexford, Dublin, Kilkenny and Galway, and they did, they got that draw against Dublin and they also got within 4 points of Wexford. To me, I think that's a rating of a B. Just a solid
B. Yeah, no, I'd agree, yeah. B was exactly what I had in my head, to be honest with you. Because it's a damn good season from, when you're coming into the unknown and I don't know Leinster's not nearly as cutthroat as Munster, but it's still a fair step up for them. And you'd have to say they competed, pretty well. The Kilkenny game aside, I not really placed any stock in the Galway game, and they went down to Cusack Park, and what was it? They put 424. I think it was 424 to 119. Like they beat Westmeath comprehensively, coming a week after Westmeath's probably greatest day against Wexford.
Okay, so PWell74 says that Antrim, Wexford and Dublin are all close. Are you suggesting that they're all quality level close or they're rating here? So if we're going to stick with alphabetically, Dublin are next. And in terms of the results that the Dubs got this year, after the league, let's be honest, they were on the handier of the two sides of the league, really. And drew with Waterford when Waterford went down to 13 men. Just had an okay league, we'll put it that way. But in terms of the championship, drew with Antrim the first day out, as we've already said. Beat Westmeath 223 to 114. Not exactly a runaway train performance there. Then against Wexford came out on top 122 to 23 points. That game was at Croke Park, and people had questioned the sense of playing in Croke Park, but I think they proved a lot of people wrong there. Lost to Kilkenny by 6 points in Nolan Park. And in recent years, whether it's been Parnell Park or Nolan Park, they've been taking pastons. And, even at Croke Park, sort of up and down performances. So I thought they performed quite well for long spells there. And then that game against Galway, they drew 222 to 125. So 2 wins, 2 draws, a loss, a little bit up and down. And beyond that point, then beat Carlow and got absolutely hammered by Clare in the quarterfinal down in Limerick. Yeah, it's a bit of a tough one because, like, in Leinster, that's not a bad performance at all. But from then on out, to be beaten the way you were by Clare, and tactically to see your team dragged all the way out the field so that the likes of David Fitzgerald and Tony Kelly could run in on you. Like Paddy Doyle, I think, did well man-marking Tony Kelly in terms of the 50-50 balls, but to ask a very young lad to leave him on him for the entire game when he didn't really have too much support, sort of question marks there as well. So I don't know. What are you looking at here?
Well, like the grade is going to change it probably a decent bit from your Leinster score that you'd give them compared to what their All Ireland score was. They obviously the game against Carlow was very competitive for long stages and they pulled away. But their Leinster, like they were only beaten by the Leinster champions in Leinster and beaten by 6 points. They were brilliant against Galway, albeit they should have won that game. Realistically, they had themselves in a winning position. But taking everything into account in Leinster, given the players that they were missing and the amount of new faces that we saw, yeah, I'd probably give them a high B. But then you're looking at the Clare game, how much stock you're placing in that. Like saying that, before half time, they were in a really, really good position. 25 minutes, maybe 30 minutes into the game, they had a lot of wides, probably didn't take enough chances. I'd probably give them a low B, I'd say. And I'm not going to place too much stock on the Clare game. I'm probably going to bring them from a B plus maybe to a B minus / C plus.
I'd say C plus at best. Just the manner of that defeat. I think it took a lot of the good out of the progress from the year. Fair enough, they weren't going to win that game, but to concede 5-26, and I know what you're saying, and like I'd also add in that Clare should have had a black card toward the end of the first half when Paul Crummy was turning and going at goal. But it's just the manner of the collapse. And they'd done so much so well, and you have to give Micheál Donoghue such credit for bringing through a lot of players. Paddy Doyle, Conor Donoghue, a few other players just off the top of the head I can't think. But
Cian O'Sullivan, Alex Considine even got a lot of game time this year, you'd say as well. They're not necessarily new players, but got a lot of game time.
Yeah, I'd say C plus at best.
C plus is okay, yeah. C plus is fine. They got a fair eye opener about the levels that they still have to go to in their last game. As you say, probably took a bit of the glass off their season, but I'm sure they're in no doubt about what needs to be done to improve to try and even get close to that level for 2024 and beyond.
Yeah, so Galway then, just going through their results, beat Wexford the first day out 24 points to 12. Drew with Kilkenny down in Nolan Park in that game that neither team seemed overly fussed about. Then put up 6-33 against Westmeath, on 17 points. So that was an absolute beatdown. Put 5-29 on Antrim. Like Galway always seem to be a team that can absolutely fillet the teams that are probably a little bit lower ranked. Drew with Dublin, like we said already, lost the Leinster final 4-21 to 2-26. That late goal from Killian Buckley, of course, turned the game there. And then beat Tipperary by 2 points, but really were 10 points better in that game in the quarterfinal. And then lost against Limerick after a very good start, but from the 25th minute on, wasn't it? They lost the rest of the game by 15 points, so it was very comprehensive.
Like, the finish to their season was so dispiriting, wasn't it, from a Galway point of view? Like, you knew that game was over with probably 20 minutes to go. And I wouldn't say
Same in All Ireland for Kilkenny. Like we're going to have to say that when we talk.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I wouldn't say they waved the white flag, but like Limerick were walking through them in the last 15 or 20 minutes. Obviously lost the Leinster final in heartbreaking circumstances. I can't remember what grade we gave them last year, but this year's grade would have to be down. You'd probably say a significant bit on last year. Still no silverware to show, which is really, really disappointing. Did they bring through many new players? Probably Sean Lalan probably made a bit of a name for himself this year. Maybe I think he done the Cruciate maybe last year or the year before.
So Kevin Cooney took a bit of a step up this year.
Kevin Cooney get an All-Star nomination, Shane, I'd say. Because I think he was one of their better players, I'd say. And Conor Whelan obviously took. Yeah, he was very good early on against Limerick as well. And Conor Whelan obviously had a couple of unbelievable games in the championship. Probably looking at flat C or maybe a
C-,
flat C, maybe C minus ish. Yeah, that type of thing. Like at the end of the day, at the start of the year, you would have said they have to win a Leinster title. They have to get their hands on some silverware, and they haven't. And they've managed to not win a Leinster in the last 4 years. Albeit you could say it was maybe freak circumstances at the end of the Leinster final. They still didn't go up the steps and lift the Bob O'Keefe Cup. So and they were very disappointed in the last 45 against Limerick. So I think a C minus is fair enough. And Henry Shefflin, who would be harsh enough himself, I'd say, in rating how their season was. And didn't he say at the end of the Limerick game, I don't know, does it look like we've improved this year? So, when the manager's saying that himself, I think a C- is well justified.
Yeah, and this is in spite of beating Tipperary and performing really well in the quarterfinal and topping the Leinster League. Like, they didn't win it, of course, in the final, but they topped that. So we won't forget that. But still, you expect a little bit more from a hurling county like that. Kilkenny then finished second in the group, got 7 points from the 10 that were available. Won the Leinster final, obviously robbing it at the death, if we can call it that way. But that's not to sort of do down their achievement, but it was one that they pulled out of the fire late on. Won the All-Ireland semi-final against Clare. That was a sort of up and down game, 222 to 122. And then had some good moments in the All-Ireland final, but ultimately were, beaten, pulling up. Last 20 minutes, the game was over and you were just waiting for the final whistle. That was 30 points to 215. So I know you have to give them credit for getting an All-Ireland final. You have to give them credit for winning the Leinster title, give them credit for beating Clare. But I don't think would Kilkenny supporters want much more than a B here, or B minus?
No, I wouldn't think so. For probably maybe 40 or 45 minutes, they were going up fine in the All-Ireland final. Weren't they 4 or 5 up at one stage after Paddy Deegan's goal? And it was just a massive, massive gulfing class thereafter, you'd have to say. And then, listen, that gulfing class... I don't think it was a collapse to the same level as Galway in the semi-final. But
was it a collapse akin to the 2016 and 2019 All-Ireland finals they had? Is this becoming too customary now for Kilkenny?
I don't know, because I think they were a much better team in 2016. I still wouldn't, I still don't think this Kilkenny team is the colour of the 16 team, even, to be honest with you. When you compare, you're not comparing. I don't think you're comparing like with like, but they'd kind of blown a gasket by 50 minutes. They were gone. I would dare say they were gone in the All-Ireland final from looking at it. So, and if you want to dumb down their grade, you can say that they stole the Leinster final. And they were outscored. Were they outscored 1-6 to a point up until that goal at the end, or something like that, in the closing stages? I'm not sure. Did we see many new Kilkenny faces? Owen Cody stepped up his game big time and looks like a potential leader of this Kilkenny team for the next decade. It was unfortunate, obviously, David Blanchfield was missing for the All-Ireland final, which was far from ideal.
Tom Phelan stepped up a bit this year.
Yeah, Tom Phelan had he had some unbelievable moments in the All-Ireland final at different stages. He's really thinking he's going to be man to match at some stages. But yeah, I probably, the fact that they did beat Clare again in the semi-final, that in a way that kind of suggests that they're I know they're beating the All-Ireland final, but they're the second best team in the country, regardless of provinces or whatever.
Are they?
Well, if Clare were the top team in Munster in the round robin, and they were beaten by a point by Limerick in the Munster final, and Kilkenny were able to take care of Clare. So that would suggest that they're the second best team. Then you can start throwing in, they didn't have to play an attritional Munster final, a Munster championship, but that's grand. I understand that, but on a given day, you're just judging a game, and they've beaten the Munster finalists for the last 2 years, beaten after extra time and beaten after a point. They've beaten them in both All-Ireland semi-finals. So I'd say probably a B for Kilkenny. B minus. I think a B would be fair enough. The end of the day, they finished up with silverware, and they're the only other team to finish up with silverware at county level.
But does anyone count the Leinster title these days? There's 2 teams.
They most certainly do count it. And if you look at their celebrations after,
a team from Connacht there.
Yeah, but that means it should be even stronger then, by all accounts, shouldn't it?
Should be.
Yeah, well, I know. I think a B is fair. And particularly, I suppose, in Derek Ling's first year as well, taking over from the greatest manager in the history of the GA. I think a B is fair.
So I suppose then Westmeath would be the next one alphabetically. Got 2 points from the group stages, 4 defeats and 1 win. Lost the first day out to Kilkenny, 29 points to 7 points, which I'm sure was would have stung Joe Fortune. Second day out, lost to Dublin, 223 to 114. Then that heavy defeat to Galway, 633 to 17. Beat Wexford. And how far behind were they that day? You were at
17 at one stage, yeah.
So that's an unbelievable win there, 418 to 222, because you can imagine what the mood was like even among the supporters. You know, people
Yeah.
who just have to stand there and watch. If you're a player, at least you can try and get out and do something about it. So incredible for those players to do that. And then the last day out, losing as they did, 119 to 424 at home in Mullingar to Antrim to confirm their relegation. Like, what do you expect from Westmeath? Just like we were saying about Antrim, what would you have expected from Westmeath? They achieved the unthinkable by winning
Yeah.
against Wexford, which, you know, was some achievement for Joe Fortune against his native county. But then to lose the one that they really needed to win, just obviously that's a killer. So they did get relegated. But to get that victory was going to push up against Wexford, is going to push up their grade.
It is, of course. It's just like it's mad to think that like Westmeath beat Wexford in the Leinster Championship this year, and they won't be playing the Leinster Championship next year. It's just the proximity of those two games was probably a bit of a disaster as well, because no matter what way you look at it, like they were going to celebrate that emotionally and everything, forever about physically or having a few pints or something like that. But you want to enjoy it and soak it all in. Whereas if you had 2 weeks after, you could do that and enjoy it for 2 or 3 days and then get back on the wagon or whatever. But you were literally trying to get up. They obviously targeted the last two games, but they were going from this high to, my God, like this is our biggest game of the year. We have to be Antrim, and they had themselves in a decent position early on, but Antrim kicked on, and yeah, like it's a difficult one. What did they want out of the year? They wanted to probably take a scalp. They did that, but they also wanted to save their status, and they didn't do that. So I don't know. Probably looking somewhere in around the C, I'd say.
Yeah.
But like they finished with, what was it, -80 score difference, which is not great, and that's obviously they won a game in the middle of that. But it's an average defeat of 19 points, is it? Or 18 point, 80, no, yeah, 16 points. Sorry, like that's a lot. And that's throwing a victory in there as well. So I think C, yeah, I think a flat C is probably fair. They achieved something unbelievable, but they probably didn't ultimately achieve their goal for the year.
Yeah, I'm just working it out there. If you leave out that Wexford game where they scored 4 goals, in the other 4 games, they averaged less than 16 points per game. So they were struggling
Yeah.
for scores up front. I think a C is fair enough. And then we'll go Wexford as the final one. So they finished fourth in the Munster group table. Started off with a 6-point defeat to Galway, then beat Antrim by 4, then lost to Dublin, then lost to Wexford, and then the last day out had a very good win over a Kilkenny team, 423 to 518. So that was like a 9-goal thriller. But just, I mean, if the Wexford County Board had decided to part company with Dara Egan, I suppose that's them saying that, look, we don't think that this is going in the right direction. I think it has to be a D, really, because they didn't qualify out of the group. They lost to a team that no one would have imagined that they would have lost to in Westmeath. I think it's hard to make a case for anything above a D.
What would it be if they'd been relegated? F?
Yeah.
Yeah. The only saving grace for them is that they turned it around, because they were in hell after that Westmeath game. And I thought the flip of Westmeath weren't able to sustain it or whatever and come and deliver a performance the week after. Wexford delivered their best performance of the year when it was needed most. But I was just puzzling at different stages that some of their best players weren't on the field. The likes of Kevin Foley, Dee O'Keefe at different stages, particularly in that Westmeath game. They were absolutely filleted by Clare down in Wexford Park. Was it 6 goals they conceded? It was a bad year for Wexford. I'd say probably D minus, probably even. Do you know what I mean? Realistically, like, take the Kilkenny game out of it. Kilkenny were qualified at that stage as well. So, and someone mentioned on the show, one of the viewers mentioned recently, do Leinster need to look at changing the fixtures? Like, Wexford have beaten Kilkenny the last 2 years in, games that weren't necessarily meaningful for Kilkenny. And they've had massive ramifications. They qualified in 2022 as a result of it, and they saved their status this year as a result of the result. So that might be something that needs to be looked at. But I'd say D minus, Shane, realistically, because like no one in Wexford is going to remember 2023 for anything other than bad memories.
Yeah, okay. So that's it. That's our report card. Let us know what your thoughts, whether you're watching it live or you're watching it later on.